The whole nation is in mourning and in shock with today's news out of Connecticut, so the timing of this segment couldn't be worse or better depending upon your point of view. Jon Cooke is the sheriff from Weld County. Glad to have you on. We were here to talk about the proposed new gun legislation that we're fearing is going to come through the legislature, or excited about depending upon your point of view. But given what happened in Connecticut today, let me just run a couple quick things by you. This hits us at home a lot more. After Columbine, after Aurora, people in Colorado feel the emotion of something as horrendous as this. From your point of view as a sheriff, what's going on right now in Connecticut? They're probably gathering evidence, but what's the mechanism?
Well, first off, John, thanks for having me on, and my heart really goes out to those people, the victims, the families, thoughts and prayers, as the whole nation's does. It's certainly a tragedy. But as far as for a law enforcement perspective, huge crime scene, and they're just beginning. They could have that school shut down for days. And so now they're doing search warrants on the house, and I understand they might have found a body at this guy's house. They're going to try and find neighbors and friends, talk to them, talk to other loved ones, and try to get to the motive of this, but also to see if there's any co-conspirators, see if there was somebody else involved. So it's going to be a long, long investigation, and it could take months, if not years, to actually complete it.
Yeah. I'm not going to try to speculate on what happened in Connecticut, but we are sensitive because we know what happened in Columbine, and we remember the incredible anti-gun push that happened after Columbine. After the Aurora shootings, I was pleased to see that the community came together to mourn, to witness what happened, to feel bad about it. But even the governor, who went on national television, said gun control laws wouldn't have changed anything. Recently, he seems to have changed that tune, saying now is the time to talk about gun control legislation. From what we know so far in Connecticut, the guns that were purchased legally. As a law enforcement official, I hear a lot of back and forth. Some law enforcement officials say, you know, it's guns, we need to control these so-called assault weapons. Others say, no, that's not the issue, it's mental illness and other issues. What have we learned in Colorado after these shootings, from a lawman's point of view?
Well, what I've learned, and most law enforcement have learned, or most sheriffs at least, is it's not the gun, it's the person, and we need to hold the person responsible. And it's unfortunate that the governor has flip-flopped on that, because usually what happens is we have knee-jerk reactions and call for all these gun control laws. And we need to step back and take a look and say, what is the real issue? Is it mental health? Is it domestic violence? What caused this? And not do a knee-jerk reaction. So I think that's what we've learned in Colorado. So I was glad to hear what the governor said initially, and very disappointed now to hear that he is thinking about flip-flopping and trying to come up with gun control laws.
There seems to be a sizable difference when it comes to sheriffs and chiefs of police. And back in the day, it was Sheriff Pat Sullivan from Arapahoe County that was a strong proponent of gun control legislation. He was always out front. Now, given his conviction and his jail time, his voice will certainly not be weighing in on this. But it seems as though sheriffs and chiefs of police have a very different point of view. And for those who don't know, sheriffs are the law enforcement official for a county. Chiefs of police are the law enforcement for a city, a municipality. Why is there such a difference?
Well, I think one of the main reasons is that we're independent elected officials as sheriffs. So I think we're more in tune with what the community wants. We hear from them all the time about what they think, and we think on our own, so to speak. We're not held accountable by a mayor or a city council or a city manager. We're held accountable by the public. So therefore, we do what we think is in the best interest. And a lot of that is on gun issues. And we are, like I said, in tune with the public and what they want. And the chiefs, a lot of times,
They have a different boss.
They do.
Their boss is the mayor, the city council. Your boss is directly to the people.
Exactly, and that's the difference, I believe, is that since I'm held accountable by the people, I do what's best for them, or what I think is best for the community.
Now, I used to be a very anti-gun person as a young man. It's taken me a long time, and now I'm a member of the NRA. I'm a shooter myself, and I've come a long way on this issue. So I understand the emotion about this. In the last 10 years since Columbine, it seems as though the state has grown, matured when it comes to gun control issues. We don't have the same knee-jerk reactions that we did a decade ago. Gun permits, concealed carry permits, are at an all-time high. Tell me your experience. As a sheriff, you're the one that now has to issue them. How's it going? How many people in Weld County?
There's about 260,000 total population in Weld County, and our concealed weapons permits are going through the roof. We've issued over probably 7,000 at this point.
Wow.
And year to date, we'll be over 1,600 year to date.
Just in this year alone?
Just this year alone.
Wow.
And in October of this year, we issued 215 concealed weapons permits. A year ago, October, it was 67.
How have they worked? I remember when this started in Florida, the idea was that there's going to be crime all over the street. Out of those 7,000, how many have you had to pull back?
Not very many. I mean, my philosophy is an armed society is a polite society, and I think that bears, our statistics bear that out. I've revoked, I believe, about 8 this year in total, and most of those...
Were those because of crimes they committed with guns?
No, absolutely not. I haven't revoked one because of a crime committed with a gun. I believe all of them have been because they got arrested for DUI. And once you get arrested, if you get found guilty or if you're convicted, you get put on probation. And part of probation is you cannot have a gun. You can't possess a gun while you're on probation. So it makes sense that if you can't have a gun on probation, you can't have the concealed weapons permit. If they're found not guilty at trial, or if the charges are dropped, then I reissue the permit.
Let's talk about what your ears to the ground on this, because a lot of your colleagues and the chiefs of police are pushing for the gun legislation. I'm curious, what is it that Colorado is now going to face? And we haven't faced this in years and years, but what proposals will law enforcement, not the chiefs, not the sheriffs, but the chiefs, what are they going to be pushing?
Well, I recently went on a trip to a conference with a police chief who's on the legislative council or committee for the chiefs, and I'm on the legislative committee for the sheriffs. And he showed me the agenda, what they had with a meeting with a group like Ceasefire and the Brady people. And there were several agenda items about registrations, limiting the size of the magazines, no private sales, the database for the concealed weapons permit, those type of issues. And the only thing that I saw in there good was trying to tighten up the mental health issues.
Let's kind of go through those. Okay. Right now, people who want to have a permit to carry concealed can have them, and you must issue them if they meet the criteria, if they've been trained, if you've had a background check, if all 10 fingers have been fingerprinted. So there's some good things there, but you have to give them their permit. You have a database in Weld County of everyone who has that. There's a push to make it a mandatory statewide database that you have to surrender that information to the state so that the state knows everybody who has a permit.
Right. When the law first passed in 2003, it was optional whether the sheriff would put the names into a statewide database. My philosophy is that the government doesn't have the right to know who owns guns or who has a permit. And so I refuse to put the people's names in that database. Some sheriffs did, most of them did. I believe there were like 8, 9, 10 of us that didn't. And I'm afraid what's going to happen is they're going to make it mandatory on anybody that has a concealed weapons permit to put it into a statewide database, and I'm adamantly opposed to that because, again, it's not the government's right to know if you have a gun or a permit, because you're the one that is following the law. You're the responsible citizen. You're not the criminal. Why should your name be in that database?
Going through some of the other proposals, I can see the usual proposals that have happened on a national level and then fallen. In 1992, President Clinton put forward a so-called assault weapons ban, a magazine ban of anything more than 10 rounds. It didn't do anything. Those have sunset and gone away. I think we're going to see the same sort of thing here. What would you explain to people, because you hear this emotional argument, why does anybody need to have a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds? Or why does anyone need to have a so-called assault weapon? These are guns that look mean. They're no different than any other auto-feeding gun, but they look meaner. You know, as a law enforcement official, you've got to be bombarded with this. Why does anybody? We trust you with that. Why would we trust somebody else with it?
Well, you know, it doesn't make sense. There's no good logical argument to say, well, you can't have a clip that holds 12 rounds versus 10. What's the difference, really? 2 rounds, 2 bullets? You know, they're trying to say, well, you can't reload, or you can't kill as many people. you know, you can drop a clip out of a semi-auto gun and reload it within a matter of 2 seconds or less. So if they're trying to limit it to 10 because less people will be killed, that's totally ridiculous. In 2 seconds, you can have that gun reloaded and firing again. And it just, again, there's no common sense argument to say why you can't have a clip that has 15 to 19 rounds.
Ammunition bans. I see this coming.
Yes.
I see that since the shooting in Aurora, and I buy my ammunition in bulk. I buy it rarely, but when I do, I find the best deal, perhaps online or at a gun show, and I will buy several thousand rounds at a time, and because I know I'll be shooting them as a target shooter. The criminal in Aurora did the same thing and used it in the wrong way. Is there talk of limiting how many bullets I can buy?
Yes, that's the other piece of legislation that I saw that they're going to try and push. The chiefs, possibly the chiefs, I should say, and the Brady Group, they wanted to limit the amount of ammunition you can buy. And I'm not sure how they're going to do that unless they come up with a database where if you go to one store, you get registered by saying you bought 100 rounds here and 100 rounds there and limit the amount you can buy. So that's another thing I really fear, and I think they're going to try and make it illegal for internet sales.
I'm trying to understand this because I have a hard time getting the civil liberties point of view. There are people, and I agree with them, who are concerned about government overreach, that don't like the idea of the Patriot Act, that don't like the idea of having people listen to our phone conversations without a warrant, or looking at our email as it gets copied and goes through these filters. But often they're the same people who say these type of databases of people who own firearms, who own high capacity magazines, who have bought bullets in discount. I go to Costco and buy my toilet paper in the exact same way. I have the space, it makes economic sense, but I should be part of a database for doing that. I'm trying to understand the difference, and I'm curious, for those who are going to come out in the law enforcement realm, and we're going to be hearing from them in the next couple months, why is it that they support that? And doesn't there seem to be some sort of dichotomy here?
Yeah, there does, because I don't understand it either, because let's face it, if I have to go to a gun store and get registered for buying ammo, I'm going to go to Wyoming. Or I'm going to go, if I live over in Grand Junction, I'm going to go to Utah or Arizona. And I'm not going to buy it here in Colorado. So the databases, there's always ways around them, and so they don't make sense. And I don't know why they want to pursue that.
I fear that they're going to have some success. Gun shows will be another one of their targets, and that going to a gun show is no different than going to any gun store. I can't purchase a gun at a gun show without a background check. Are gun shows havens for criminals?
No, not at all. They're just as legitimate as a regular, like you said, gun store. What the bigger problem now is they're trying to close other loopholes, and that's the individual sales of handguns. So the guns, the gun stores or the gun shows, that's not the problem. It's because here again, those people are following the law. The criminals aren't getting their guns from gun stores. They're getting them from other criminals.
In the coming months, when guys in uniform, and you know they're going to be in uniform, they'll have their badge on them, are in front of the cameras and in front of the legislators talking about the need for gun control legislation. In the minute we have left, tell me, what is it people should know when they're hearing that? What should they be thinking?
Well, what they should be thinking is, I need to get down there and contact my legislator, and not just write letters, and not just leave it up to the sheriffs. They need to go down and testify at the State House. Most people don't know they can do that. I was talking to a very intelligent friend of mine who's an engineer, and he's concerned about these gun control legislation that's coming up. And I told him, you need to go out and testify. And he said, well, I didn't know I could do that. So they need to be active, and they need to be down at the State House talking to their legislators, and not just down there, but and when they come back to their communities. And
just because somebody's wearing a uniform and has a star on their chest doesn't mean that they are for or against gun laws. Most sheriffs and a lot of rank and file cops are quite the opposite way.
Right. As a matter of fact, like most sheriff's deputies I know are, and even the line level police are for it.
Sheriff, thank you so much. Thank you. Tell a friend about Independence Institute, and listen for me tonight on KOA Radio. We'll see you next week.